All right, everyone, welcome to the Q4 mentor training for mentors working with teachers in their second year in the profession. So we are going to start our time together with a survey. So if you are watching the recording, go back to the email that you got the link from and click into the survey link and take 5 minutes to fill out that survey. Also, don't forget to do your attendance, and the attendance link is also in the chat link if you're listening to the recording. Don't forget to click into that email and click into the attendance link so that your attendance can be recorded. So I'm going to sign off. I'm not signing off completely. I'm going to be quiet for the next 5 minutes so the participants that are attending live have a chance to do their survey. So we'll reconvene at 53. If you're just coming on, I'm going to drop the attendance link and the survey link into the chat box. And I'm giving everyone a couple of minutes to complete the survey. So I just dropped the attendance link, and here comes the survey link for you to complete. And we are going to reconvene in 4 minutes. if you're just coming on, there's no sound because I've dropped a survey link into the chat box, and I've given 5 minutes for participants to fill out the survey. So now I'm dropping the survey link and the attendance link into the chat box. So if you're just coming on, you have those. It is 3:53, so we're going to continue on with the Zoom. I want to honor your time. But if you just came on, please make sure that you take some time to fill out the survey whenever you have a chance. Okay, so let's go. We're on the home stretch, everyone. Just one more coaching cycle. So we are in Q4. And so I'm just some encouragement to make it to the end. One more coaching cycle. And here is just a recap of the coaching cycle. I know everyone has done it 3 times before, but just to put some context around the Zoom session, remember that pre-conference is an opportunity for you to meet prior to the classroom visit to set a focus for the visit and decide on that data collection. It's always a good idea for the mentee to decide what they want to shine the spotlight on, so that when you come in to that classroom visit, you can be a witness to the good. You want to document all the fabulous things that you see happening in your mentee's classroom, and then just take that agreed upon data, so that when you do your post-conference together, you can review the data, and then your mentee has that opportunity to reflect on their own practice. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of the coaching cycle. It's a structured opportunity for your mentee to reflect on their own practice. And we've been doing this all year long with your second year mentee. This is your 4th coaching cycle with this structured opportunity to generate that reflection, in the hopes that they'll continue doing that in their own practice on their own. That's really the reason behind these coaching cycles. It's a model, and it's a model for reflection that hopefully will be continued on throughout their entire career. Okay, so I've created this data collection menu for you, and I've been vetting it all year. At the beginning, I just put some forms together, the things that made sense to me. But when I pushed this out during the first Zoom, again, I had just put some forms together, but all year long, I've been vetting this list. And over the year, I've reviewed them, I've created samples, I've taken out duplications, and I've vetted it down to 10 actual forms, plus the student interviews, which we're going to be talking about later on during this Zoom. Today, we are going to talk about the forms that are circled in red. All the other forms I've talked about in detail during the last Zoom, the Q3 Zoom. So this is our agenda for this particular Zoom, are these 5 data collection options. Okay, first on the list is the consistent corrections chart. The reason this particular form is a data collection option is because when teachers issue corrections inconsistently, and when I say that, I mean when a teacher allows side conversations on one occasion, but then doesn't on another occasion, or when one student calls out and doesn't get a correction while another student may get a correction. Those inconsistent corrections confuse kids, and they create complaints from the teacher that they might be unfair. And so this particular form gives a mentor an opportunity to measure if corrections are applied consistently to students for not following expectations. This form only works when a teacher has explicitly set expectations for behavior. One of my favorite sayings is, you may or may not have heard me say this, but I seem to say it a lot, but the saying is, if you expect it, you must inspect it. So this particular form gives the mentor an opportunity to inspect the consistency of corrections. So if you look at the form there, you'll see two columns, and at the top of the column, it says observed. There's three columns. The second column says observed, and the third column says corrected. So this particular form gives an opportunity for the mentor to tally the agreed upon behaviors that are going to be tallied. So during the pre-conference, you would sit down with the teacher and say to them, which behaviors do you want me to tally? So this particular sample just lists out some of the things that may be tallied, but know that you want to drill down to those behaviors that you're tallying. So what the mentor would do would be to tally whenever they observe the behavior that has been identified as needing tallies, and then if that behavior was corrected, then you would tally in that last column. So you'll watch the lesson, you'll generate the tallies, and if you look at the bottom of the form, you can see that you can come up with a quantitative measure of consistency by the teacher. This particular sample tallied 67% of consistent correction. So that particular quantitative measure gives your mentee teacher an opportunity to reflect on that and maybe create some next steps. So this consistent corrections chart at the end of the day gives an opportunity to get that quantitative measure of consistent corrections, with the caveat that those expectations for learning has already been established. So that's the consistent corrections chart. Moving on to the next one is this particular form is called the Academic Engagement Monitoring Form. What it really is it measures time on task. And this particular form is pretty, I'm going to go ahead and mute that. This particular form is very similar to it's identical to the time on task form. However, it's called the Academic Engagement Form. Remember when we talked about the three different types of engagement? There's three different types. There's behavioral engagement, which really it measures are students doing what the teacher has asked students to do. There's affective engagement. Do the students like what's happening in the classroom? And then the third type of engagement is cognitive engagement, and that measures did the students learn what was intended to be learned? So this particular form that you're looking at is really measures behavioral engagement. Are the students doing what the teacher has asked them to do? Now, like the time on task form, it is designed for a 5-minute period where you would sit in the back of the classroom, and you would set the timer for 5 minutes, and you would look at each student individually for 5 seconds. And if the student is doing what they've been asked to do by the teacher, if they're behaviorally engaged with that time on task, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they get a plus. If they're not doing what they should be doing in those 5 seconds, they get a minus. And so that's what the mentor would do. They would spend five seconds on each student, tallying a plus or a minus for each student, whether they're doing what they should be doing. And after the 5 minutes is over, and so the way this this particular form works is that you would go to every student for 5 seconds, and when you get to the last student, then you start all over again until the 5 minutes is over. So at the end of those 5 minutes, you would count the number of pluses and minuses and generate a percentage. So the particular form that you're looking at has an 80% time on task measure, that quantitative evidence that students are behaviorally engaged doing what you asked them to do. So this particular percentage would give a mentee a starting point to start thinking, to start reflecting on whether students are behaviorally engaged. The next form that you see in front of you is the teacher talk versus student talk. So research shows that students should, let me rephrase that. Research shows that teachers should limit their speaking to 20 to 30%, and that students should be talking about 80% of the time. Class discussions have been identified by Hattie to have a high impact on student achievement, a 0.82 effect size. When you think about a 0.4 effect size being that hinge point between a positive impact on learning or not, at a 0.82 effect size, class discussions are a very effective way for students to continue their learning. A good rule of thumb is to implement some kind of change after 10 minutes of student talk. For focus to continue, there needs to be some kind of change in the way the brain is dealing with information. And that change could be like a turning talk. It could be a group discussion. It could be a check for understanding with a question to the group. It could be an activity. It could be all kinds of things, but it's always a good rule of practice for there to be an opportunity for students to process information every 10 minutes. For littles, it's even less than 10 minutes. But a good rule of thumb is 10 minutes of teacher talk and then some kind of change for students to process that information. So let's move to this form that you're looking at in front of you, teacher talk versus student talk. This form allows the mentor to measure how much real time is the teacher talking, how much real time is the students talking or doing an activity or processing the information that's been presented to them. So again, if you look at this form, there in the left-hand corner, there's an opportunity to identify what the actual teacher is doing versus what the students are doing. So this particular form, at the top, the teacher gave instructions for 3 minutes, and then students did a writing activity for 7 minutes. There was a video for 12 minutes, and then there was a turn and talk for 4 minutes. This is actually real-time data that I took in a classroom a couple months ago. The next portion of instruction was 6 minutes of instructions, and then partner reading for 18 minutes, and then question and answer. Both students and teacher got a 10-minute allotment for that. I mean, because that's pretty much 50-50 when it's a question answer with students. So at the bottom, you can see that I tallied the total time that the teacher was talking and the total time that the students were talking, and then I calculated the percentage. And for this particular lesson, the students were talking about 60% of the lesson, which is, I think, that's a good ratio to start with. So at the end of the day, students should be talking more than the teacher, and the particular form that you're looking at in front of you measures that into real-time minutes. Okay, moving on to wait time observation. Now, wait time is a deliberate pause before answering a question. And typically, Charlotte Danielson she likes to recommend 3 to 5 seconds. But at the end of the day, it's a deliberate pause before answering a question. And what that pause does is it allows a student, and it doesn't really matter what grade level they're in, if they're a kinder or they're a senior in high school, it gives them a chance to collect their thoughts and formulate a response. And it can be implemented strategically or organically. And when I say strategically or organically, let me explain that. If you're doing a wait time strategically, you would say to the class, okay, I'm gonna ask you a question, and then I'm gonna give you some think time before I take any responses. And so you could structure that question so that students know that they're gonna get a chance to think about that. And they're going to get a chance to formulate your response. So you're strategically telling them that you're not going to take any responses. You're not going to continue instruction until they've had that think time, or you can do it organically. Ask the question and just wait. And you can just, that could just be your teaching style, that you're not going to continue. You're going to give that deliberate pause organically within the instructional sequence. So you can do it either way. I know that as a teacher myself, I always did it strategically because I was a primary classroom teacher, and first graders I would always set it up for first graders that I'm not taking any hands. Don't raise your hand until I say, so that you have that think time. And at the end of the day, giving students that wait time allows them the opportunity to generate a quality response, because that's really what you want them to do. You're teaching them to not be so impulsive and just blurt out whatever first comes to mind. You're giving them that opportunity you're giving them that opportunity to develop develop a skill to collect their thoughts and think before they talk. And I think that's good for all grade levels. Now, moving the attention over to the actual form itself, you'll notice there on that wait time observation, there's 3 columns, and this data is very easy to take. All the mentor would need to do is to tally every time a question is asked, and every time there's a 3 to 5 second wait time, there's another tally. So at the end of the lesson, you would have a percentage of questions versus wait time that happen, so that you get that quantitative measure that you can present to your mentee, and it gives them a starting point to do some reflection on their own. The way we've structured the coaching cycles is that there's a structure for that reflection, but at the end of the day, what we want them to do is be able to reflect on their own. So this form gives mentors a tool to provide that data for reflection. Okay, so there's the forms that I had wanted to present to you this entire year. We've gone over all the forms in the data collection menu. Feel free to go back to the Q3 recording if you want to get a refresher on some of the other forms, but there are 10 very good forms at your fingertips to use during your Q4 coaching cycle. The last thing on the agenda for tonight is to go into your drives and make sure that you have the Q4 pre and post conference forms. This is a good opportunity to get some support if you need help in your drive. If you actually have the forms and you feel, oh, you know what? We missed a form. I'm going to go back. Let's do this. Let me make sure that you have your pre and post conference forms, but I just noticed that I missed a slide. For some reason, my my slide deck is advancing 2 slides instead of 1. And I just noticed that I missed a slide, so I definitely want to go over that slide. But prior to that, let's make sure that everyone has their pre and post conference forms. If you see them there, give me a thumbs up. And then I'm going to go back to the student interview forms that I do want to talk with you about before we end the Zoom. Okay, so I want to go back to this slide because I want to talk about these student interviews. Now, when I say student interviews, what these forms allow a student to do is to give teachers feedback on their instruction. You know, at the end of the day, student opinions can and should drive instruction to some degree. We don't always have control over what we teach, but we do have control how we teach it. So this feedback, these engagement feedback forms give a teacher that feedback from students on how engaged they were during a lesson. So the 3 forms that you see on the left-hand side, they're basically the same form. However, the 2 of the forms use emoji, you know, like a student would circle if they would circle the frowny face or the straight face or the smiley face. That's probably more for primary kids. And it asks the question, what would make this lesson better? That's more of a primary type student feedback form, which is fine. The ones on the right-hand side use the engagement language. I was engaged in today's lesson. What would make learning more engaging? And the third one actually allows a student to rate their level of engagement on a scale of 1 to 7 and ask the question, what would make learning more engaging? Those 3 forms are designed to be given to a student at the end of a lesson, and then the teacher would have that feedback to reflect on. Now, the one on the very right-hand side, and it's kind of hidden a little bit, but what you see is you see the 7-point scale, and the 7-point scale is duplicated in rows. That particular form is designed to be given to students during the lesson, in where a teacher would strategically stop the lesson at different points in the lesson and cue them to rate their level of engagement. So maybe 10 minutes go by, and then the teacher stops the lesson and says, okay, I want you to get out your form and I want you to rate your level of engagement. So the 4th form is designed to be implemented during the lesson, whether the teacher likes using the student interviews at the end of the lesson, or a teacher actually wants to use a form where they're being asked to rate their level of engagement during the lesson. The student feedback is super important and should help drive how lessons are delivered. So these are great forms to use. So I'm glad I had an opportunity to go over that. Don't think I missed any other slides. I do not know why my slides are advancing 2 slides instead of 1, but here we are at the end. I want to thank everybody for being my guinea pigs this year. You guys are the first group of teachers that have done the coaching cycles. I want to thank you for all the support you've given your new to profession teacher. And I've really enjoyed and I feel like I've been challenged to design all these Zooms for you guys. So it's been a really great experience for me, and I hope it was the same for you guys. Know that I will be submitting your names for payment at the beginning of May. Last year, I don't believe the payments got out as early as I had thought they would be pushed out, just know that I'll be submitting your names for payment at the beginning of May in the hopes that you'll get paid sooner than later. So thank you again for all your hard work, and I wish you a fabulous rest of the school year, and know that I'm always available if you have any questions. If you are still having trouble getting into your Google Drive and need a little bit of support, feel free to stay on. Otherwise, I bid you good night. Marge, were you able to find those
The course
pre-conference forms in your Google Drive?
I did not use them earlier, but I'm filling out the Q4 for the observation that we did earlier.
Thank you.
But
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
sorry about that.
Awesome. You know, there's always some accountability that I know, I think I've said this before, but this particular thing is funded out of 2A federal funds, and there's always some kind of accountability piece that has to happen with these
Yeah.
federal funds.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm not
That's
like waxing eloquent, I'm just filling it out. That's
perfect.
okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the night. Did you need
Okay.
any more help, or should we just sign off?
I think I'm good. I'll just go, yeah, I'll do my backlog.
Yeah, you can
Thank you.
continue.
All right. Thank you so much.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.